Okay, 10 and 28 days. Just think about that for a second.
Mm-hmm.
That's how long Meng Wanzhou, the Huawei executive, was detained up in Canada and her return to China. Well, it wasn't just an executive flying home, was it? It felt like a really big moment.
Oh, absolutely. Huge implications for China, for the U.S., for, well, global power dynamics generally.
And the material you shared for this deep dive, it gives us a really specific viewpoint on this. We've got that transcript from This is China, the YouTube program.
Right, which definitely presents a particular narrative, a distinct way of seeing the whole thing.
Exactly. So our aim here isn't just to, recap the headlines. We want to really dig into the arguments in these sources. How are they interpreting this? What does it tell us about their view of the U.S. and international politics right now?
Yeah, pull out those core ideas for you, the listener, without getting bogged down.
Okay, so let's start with that narrative. The story they tell about her return, it's powerful. What struck you first?
Well, the immediate thing is how it's consistently framed as a win. A big victory. Not just for her personally, but for Huawei as a company and for China itself.
Right, and the detention itself, not presented neutrally at all.
No, not at all. It's called illegal, flat out. Mm-hmm. A kidnapping even orchestrated by the U.S. That language is really strong.
Yeah, very strong. And it's positioned as more than just a one-off incident, isn't it? They seem to see it as a real turning point.
Definitely. A moment that, in their view, really exposed the, quote, hypocrisy and hegemony of the U.S. This event just pulled back the curtain.
It's almost like they're saying, see, this reveals the truth.
Exactly. And they use this phrase, ideological enlightenment, for the Chinese people, suggesting it really woke people up, spurred national pride, brought people together.
That idea of national unity comes up a lot.
It does. Though, you could also ask what the implications are of that kind of heightened nationalism internationally. Does it simplify things too much sometimes?
That's a fair question. And they link it to other things, too, don't they? Past events?
Oh, yeah. They list things like the Galaxy incident, the embassy bombing in Yugoslavia, the South China Sea plane collision, even disruptions to the Olympic torch relay back in 2008.
Right. It's like they're weaving this narrative thread saying, look at this history of, Western antagonism. Did that stand out to you?
It absolutely did. It feels like they're building a case piece by piece, arguing these events collectively showed the, quote, true face of the West.
And central to this case, this specific incident, is Huawei itself.
Yes, exactly. The transcript makes a big deal of Huawei's rise, especially in things like 5G. Because Huawei got so advanced, the argument goes, it became a target.
A target for the U.S., specifically because of that tech leadership.
That's the claim. Fear of China's technological progress driving the U.S. actions.
So how did the sources talk about the U.S. perspective then? Obviously, they're interpreting it, not reporting directly from U.S. officials.
Right. It's purely their interpretation. And the core argument is that it was political. Right. Fundamentally political. The goal, they say, was to hinder Huawei and, by extension, China's tech development.
And this term long-arm jurisdiction comes up. Can you just briefly unpack that for anyone less familiar?
Sure. It's basically when a country tries to apply its own laws outside its borders to people or companies in other countries.
Okay.
And here, the accusation is the U.S. used its domestic law, the whole Iran sanctions thing, to reach out and grab Meng in Canada, essentially ignoring international norms to serve its own interest.
Extending its legal reach, basically.
Exactly. And they draw this direct line to the Alstom case. Frederick Pierucci's book, The American Trap. Apparently Meng even had it on her desk.
Interesting detail. What's the point of that comparison, beyond just saying, see, they do this?
Well, they contrast the outcomes, right? Pierucci felt abandoned, reportedly, by his company, by France. But Meng had massive backing from Huawei, from the Chinese state. The suggestion is China learned from cases like Alstom, perhaps, and was ready this time.
Ready to push back. So the claim is that this long-arm jurisdiction, which maybe worked against Alstom, actually failed this time against China.
That's exactly the narrative. Yeah. That Meng's return signifies a major moment where China's strength and strategic response successfully countered that U.S. legal pressure. A first, maybe.
Interesting. So let's talk about that response, China's actions. The transcript mentions a firm stance, strategic pushback. What examples did they give?
Well, they point to things like those pretty fiery talks in Anchorage. Remember those?
Oh, yeah. Very public.
And then the meetings in Tianjin later, where China apparently laid out these 3 bottom lines and 2 lists of demands for the U.S. It's all framed as China not backing down, standing firm diplomatically.
Okay. And how do they read the current state of the relationship now? I think you mentioned the U.S. Trade Representative talking about recoupling.
Yeah, recoupling, which is sort of a shift away from full decoupling, maybe. A recognition that the economies are just too intertwined.
So how do the speakers in the transcript see that?
They seem to view it as, well, maybe a sign the U.S. is adjusting its strategy slightly, perhaps acknowledging China's strength. And they definitely see Meng's return as a direct result of China's assertive stance paying off.
Like, the U.S. blinked, in a way.
That's the implication. But importantly, they also add a note of caution.
Oh, how sad.
They don't think the U.S. pressure is just going to disappear, especially on Huawei, on China's tech sector overall. They stress that China needs to stay focused, stay vigilant. The struggle isn't over.
Right. So a victory, but not the end of the story. What about the impact inside China? The transcript calls it an educational moment.
Yeah, it's seen as having really taught the Chinese public a lot about the U.S., about international power plays, and as we said, boosting that sense of national cohesion.
And they point to the public reaction as evidence.
Exactly, like the huge number of people who watched Meng's return live on CCTV. They see that as proof of this widespread national support and unity.
Okay. What about wider lessons for other countries watching this?
The main takeaway presented is the importance of independence. Political, defense, but critically technological independence. That's what allows a country to resist external pressure, make its own calls.
And they contrast China with others.
Yeah, they mentioned the difficulties Japan faced with Toshiba or France with Alstom, suggesting those countries lacked the comprehensive national power, maybe, to withstand the U.S. in the same way China did.
Implying China could succeed where others couldn't. Is their suggestion this might lead to a global shift towards China?
It's hinted at. The idea that China's resilience here might encourage other nations to perhaps align more closely with Beijing in the future, a potential change in global dynamics.
Let's zoom in on Huawei itself for a minute. They've obviously been hit hard by U.S. sanctions. How resilient does the transcript say they've been?
It acknowledges the hit, definitely, especially the smartphone side of things. But the main message is one of resilience. They highlight how Huawei's pivoting,
How so?
expanding into new areas. Harmony OS, their operating system, autonomous driving tech, pouring money into R&D. It's painted as a company adapting, looking long-term.
And do they mention any downside for the U.S. from the sanctions?
They do, yeah. They suggest it could backfire, maybe higher costs for U.S. consumers eventually, supply chain headaches as companies look elsewhere, and they express real confidence that Huawei will overcome this, develop its own advanced tech, maybe even leapfrog in some areas.
Okay. One last piece mentioned briefly was Taiwan. How does that fit into the discussion?
It's mentioned in the context of President Xi's stance, Taiwan being an internal matter, rejecting outside interference.
Well, their position.
Right.
Yeah.
But the transcript also notes some comments from Japan's leader about Japan-China relations, hinting at the complexities. The overall feeling presented is that Taiwan's become even more central, more critical in the whole U.S.-China picture.
And they touch on the military balance.
Yeah, there's an assessment mentioned that, military simulations increasingly suggest the U.S. might struggle in a conflict over Taiwan, that China's capabilities have grown significantly.
Right. Okay, so summing this all up, this deep dive into the This is China source really shows the Meng Wanzhou event viewed as this major symbolic victory for China.
Absolutely. A symbol of growing strength, a moment that supposedly exposed U.S. overreach and a powerful catalyst for national unity inside China.
And for you listening, it really highlights the sheer complexity of that U.S.-China relationship, doesn't it? And the importance placed on national strength, tech independence.
Yeah, it gives you a clear look at how this major event is understood through that specific lens, offering insights into those power dynamics and how U.S. actions are perceived.
Hopefully this has given you, our listener, a kind of concentrated look at a really pivotal global moment and all its different layers. A shortcut to getting up to speed, maybe.
So maybe a final thought to leave you with. Considering this whole analysis, the Meng Wanzhou case, the talk about independence, the tech race, what does it suggest about where global power is heading?
How will nations manage to find their own way in a world that's so connected, but also clearly so competitive and contested? And you have to wonder, what's the next big test going to be? Where will these dynamics play out next? Something to think about.